Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Lobster Bisque. That's right, this has been on the list for a long time, and there is really no better special occasion soup than Lobster Bisque. And while it's not very hard to make, there are a few steps involved, the first of which entails sending a couple crustaceans to lobster heaven. We're going to take 2 lobsters. I like to use these smaller lobsters, like 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 pound. For Lobster Bisque, 2 small lobsters is always better than 1 big lobster. Now, many say lobsters can't feel any pain, but I don't like to take any chances, so I put these in the freezer for a half hour before I did this to basically knock them out cold. So we're going to take a sharp knife, and I'm going to cut right through the head, right between the eyes, all the way through. I'm going to turn it and cut it down the back like that, right through the tail, and there is your halved lobster. Okay, once the lobster's split, we have to remove the stomach. So I'm just going to take my tongs and pull out that sack. It very well may have a bunch of sandy-looking, gunky stuff like you see here. Oops, if anything falls out, make sure you get it. Oops, that's not it. There we go. Once you've removed the stomach sac from the head, we're going to break this up in pieces. We're going to pull off the claws. I'm going to cut the tail off. You can do this with your hands, but because I'm operating a camera, I'm using scissors here. I like to cut the legs like that. You're definitely going to want to crack the claws. Do that under a towel. I just use the back of a knife. You can use a rolling pin or a meat pounder. All right, but use a towel, otherwise it's going to splash everywhere. Same for the knuckles. Go ahead and crack those. And I'll put a link on Food Wishes that shows this in more detail. But once you've cut and cracked your 2 lobsters, we're going to throw those in a roasting pan with a little bit of celery and onion. And we're going to throw that in a hot oven, 400 degrees, for about 15 or 20 minutes until it's nicely roasted. The shells are going to turn that beautiful rusty red color. And then we're going to transfer all of this into your stock pot except for those tail pieces. Save those 4 tail halves. I'll show you what to do with those in a minute. All right, but everything besides the tails can go in a large stock pot. See that? Large one. All right, at least 6 quarts, so you have plenty of room to work. And then we're going to add a splash of water to the roasting pan. I'm going to put that on like medium-high heat and just give it about 2 or 3 minutes to deglaze the bottom. We want every available molecule of lobster flavor. So once all that stuff comes up off the bottom, we're going to go ahead and pour that into the stock pot. And then I'm going to add enough water to make 3 quarts total. All right, so I deglazed with a couple cups, and then I added the rest to make 3 quarts of cold water. I'm going to add a few garlic cloves, a few sprigs of fresh thyme, and a bay leaf. I want you to put that on medium-high heat and bring that up to a simmer. Okay, now that's going to take a couple minutes. While we're doing that, let's go ahead and pull the meat from the tails and just wrap that up and reserve it. We will put that back in the soup later, of course. Okay, so meat goes in the fridge, lobster tail shells go back in the stock, and like I said, you want to bring that up to a simmer, and of course, like almost all stocks, as soon as it starts to boil, I want you to back the heat down to low and just simmer gently for 40 minutes. This is not a stock that simmers a long time. In fact, many people think the flavor deteriorates if you cook it over that amount of time. So about 40 minutes later, my stock looked like this. We're going to go ahead and take a strainer and remove that into a colander. All right, you definitely want a bowl under that colander. Every drop of that juice is precious, okay? So we'll dump that juice back in our stock. And then when it's cool enough to handle, pick out all the meat you can. Most of it's going to come from the claws and the knuckles. You can use a nutcracker or cut it open with scissors, but try to get every tiny scrap you can. And we'll refrigerate that along with our tail meat for later. I said every tiny scrap. There you go. All right, once the meat's picked, and any reserved liquid that dripped through that colander is poured back in the stock pots, we're going to go ahead and add 1 cup of crushed tomatoes. I'm using San Marzano, and we're also going to fortify that with a little bit of tomato paste. I'm also going to add a couple teaspoons of paprika. No, that's not cayenne, so don't get all excited. Give that a stir, and bring that up to a simmer over medium-high heat. And as soon as that comes up to a simmer, I'm going to add some long-grain rice. Traditionally, bisque is thickened with rice, not a roux. So after I put that in, I'm going to turn the heat down to medium, and we're going to simmer that for about 30 minutes or until the rice completely cooks and starts to fall apart. The rice has to be absolutely soft, all right? And how you know, if you can smash it against the side of the pot like that, it's done. At that point, turn off your heat, and we're going to blend this completely smooth. I'm using an immersion blender. A stick blender works great. You can use a regular blender, of course. And you can see that rice just gives it the most awesome, luxurious, beautiful texture you're ever going to taste in a soup. And personally, I'd be totally happy just eating that, but this gets way better. So what we're going to do at this point, we're going to add some brandy. And I don't want you to use good brandy. I want you to use cheap brandy. Ask your local wino what they drink and use that. By the way, do not tell them you're making lobster bisque. That would just be mean. All right, so some brandy, a big splash of heavy cream, a few drops of Worcestershire sauce, a nice big shake of cayenne pepper. This soup should definitely have a little heat involved. All right, we're going to stir that in. And now we need to simmer this for about 10 to 15 minutes to cook out that raw alcohol flavor in the brandy. And you want to be careful. My heat's on about medium, maybe just over medium. And you want to take a spatula and you want to make sure it's not sticking to the bottom because it is thick now. It could scorch if you don't pay attention. So you don't want to have it simmering any more than that, just a gentle simmer. And once that's simmered for about 10 or 15 minutes, just like that, nice and gently, we're going to go ahead and chop up our reserved lobster meat. Now you can really mince this fine. Some people like it like almost pureed. Other people like it in big chunks. That's up to you. You're the boss of your bisque. I like to do mine in the middle somewhere. We're going to go ahead and toss that lobster in. We're going to reduce the heat to low. And once that's heated through and seasoned, you're done. So give it a taste. Mine needed just a touch more cayenne and some salt. And that is ready to serve. I'm going to ladle that up. I'm going to garnish with just a few extra drops of whipped cream. I'm going to swirl it into the shape of the constellation Crab Nebula, because there is no lobster nebula. A little more cayenne. And then, instead of parsley or chive, I went with some freshly chopped tarragon, which has a beautiful kind of anisette flavor, works perfectly with this soup. And that's it! Lobster Bisque! That is a gorgeous looking bowl of soup. Even you people that don't think anything looks good have to admit, that looks pretty good. And how does it taste? It's almost beyond description. All right, a proper lobster bisque should taste more like lobster than lobster. And if that sounds impossible, you've never made lobster bisque, because it's true. Okay? So I really, really hope you give this a try. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info, as usual. And as always, enjoy.